Demoman is a unique class in sixes in that he has a pretty unique limitation that other classes don't, which is the fact that Demo is so good at pretty much everything, but you can only do one or maybe two things at a time. So you really have to choose how you spend your time, or more specifically, how you spend your ammo. Now, of course, this kind of trade-off, opportunity cost decision-making is not unique to Demo, but it's definitely the most pronounced for Demo and more central to that class compared to others. And so this choice in target selection is what we're going to go over today. Sort of talk about it as a multifaceted concept, the different trade-offs or decision-making reasons, I guess, going into it. And yeah, that's what we're gonna go over in today's ramblings. So the actual footage here is from a pretty silly pug, so the gameplay is not going to be particularly high quality, but I was quite rusty, so I'm sure I'll be making some of the mistakes that I am going to talk about, which might be nice to see. So anyway, let us begin by introducing Demo's role in a 6v6 team, because you are a very central part of the team. In some respects, you're kind of the backbone of the team, because you are a primary damage dealer. Of course, between stickies and pipes, you have many projectiles that are very good at holding doors, very good at spreading damage in team fights, and very good at just applying damage in general. Now, you obviously want to apply this in ways that help your team the most. So usually when, for example, in an even Ubers situation, when neither team has a strong advantage one way or the other, aka a stalemate, usually the attacking team, the team with control of the midpoint, they have some leeway with which they can pressure, maybe make something happen. As far as the pressure goes, they might get some damage, might get some positioning in space, whatnot, but likely they're going to be sending a sack. But point being, these sacks are going to be successful with the other team, or with this aggressive team pressuring. And you as the Demo are uniquely equipped to deny this pressure. So very often you'll see, especially on points like a last point, where you really just hole up and get as defensive as possible as a team. Usually the Demo is going to be rotating where you're holding based on where the other team is pressuring. So you're very much a asset that your team likes as far as denying the other team's combo goes. That being, their own Demo, their medic, their heals in general. So being able to stuff the enemy combo is quite nice. But you're also a stellar area control class because you are uniquely equipped to be able to shoot at positions rather than just people. Now, of course, Soldier as well has splash damage and rockets and can do that to some degree, but you only have so many rockets compared to Demo, just way more projectiles. On top of those projectiles doing more damage, even at that range. And you can even leave those stickies undetonated and just control that area as you see fit. So, also on top of it, I know there's just so many things. On top of that, Demo is uniquely capable of shooting players off of high ground, whereas something like a Soldier's Rockets or a Scout Scattergun even, weapons that are worse off at shooting players who are on high ground, because either you are missing out on splash damage or they can kind of conceal themselves using the geometry of the height or what have you. Stickies really, and pipes as well for that matter, really don't care about the high ground, and it's much easier to shoot those players who are standing on height. So you're a really stellar high ground denier, area control. Again, you're just kind of the backbone, main damage dealer. And also, yeah, on the topic of dealing damage, you want to create opportunities for your team in team fights by pressuring the enemy players with damage. If you hit a player for, 70 plus damage, that could be a kill. That is a person who is now very vulnerable. And if you're able to create an opportunity like that and conjure up a pick with your damage, then yeah, your team is off to a great start in that fight. And in many cases, a pick is enough to just win a team fight. So right, that's kind of the general goal of Demo and your basic role. Now let's actually talk about target selection, talk about who to be shooting at when, and things of that nature. So let us cover perhaps the simplest example, which is that stalemate, even Ubers, sacking situation that we introduced already. And in cases like that, a quite big mistake that demos make is they turn around and focus on the actual soldier sacking and bombing in, when usually that's not the right play. The reason being that sack should be accompanied by pressure, and if you as the demo, aka like the primary pressure denier, if you turn your back to the choke point that's being pressured, then the other team just has free reign to walk in, take space, and that space the other team is taking is going to be way more threatening than just one soldier bombing in is. It's going to take some trust in your team, and this is something that's a lot easier to trust your team with when you're actually on a team with them and play with them regularly. But your scout, your pocket scout, should be good enough at shooting those bombers to limit the number of rockets those soldiers can shoot to, 1 or 2 after they land. And your med should be mechanically good enough to surf the rocket well enough so that that soldier doesn't kill them in 1 or 2 rockets, right? And assuming those 2 things happen, then usually you can ignore that single soldier bomb and actually focus on stuffing the pressure. On top of the fact that in a indirect way, you are helping against that soldier bombing by isolating them from their team. By making it so that no one can actually walk forward and capitalize on the space that is being taken there, then you're making it very easily, you're isolating that soldier with the rest of your team, making it very easy for them to get taken out. So yeah, it's still very much contributing to eliminating that soldier, even if you're not directly fighting them. Now, that being said, that's merely kind of an opportunity cost thing, right? Where it makes sense to be shooting at the pressure rather than the soldier because, someone wants to do it. Otherwise things go poorly. But what if there is no pressure? Well, in that case, by all means, you can be helping out with the actual player themselves. And there are going to be cases similar to this where, let's say it's late into a team fight. Let's say it's late into a mid fight. A bunch of the other team died. Maybe there's only 1 or 2 players just left scrapping around, and a flank scout gets in on your med. In a case like that, absolutely, that is who you should be prioritizing in that moment, and you shouldn't necessarily just try to be holding the choke point against some imaginary threat. Instead, it makes a lot of sense to be shooting at that direct threat. Right. And even for just standard soldier bombs, if you have the luxury of being able to shoot at them, knowing that there isn't pressure, then by all means, that's a fine use of your time. Right. So that's sort of the first tenet of target selection in general and who to be shooting at, is who you have the luxury of shooting at. Because at the end of the day, you do have to kind of just fill your role, and that might lead you to be forced to ignore some targets you might not necessarily want to be ignoring all the time, but you just kind of have to. Right, let's introduce another aspect of target selection, and that's the threat level. So there are, depending on where the other team is positioned, what they're doing, what class they are, things like that, is really going to decide how threatening they are. So things like a scout running directly at you is obviously a big threat. Something like a demo on the other side of the map, definitely less of a threat. Maybe if they're running lock and load, you have to at least pay attention to them, but they're not directly threatening. And likewise, a soldier spamming from high ground, like way across the map, not a direct threat in that same sense. So these players that are really getting onto you and threatening to just straight up kill you are obviously pretty huge threats. And as a result, that's definitely going to bump them up in the target selection priority. When you don't have anything more important to do, then by all means, these very threatening players are worth taking out. Now, that being said, this is not gospel, because there are going to be many cases where, for example, in a mid fight, well, let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that in a moment. What next? What else is important is the actual class they are and the value of the target. Getting damage on different players can be important in different contexts. So, for example, on a mid fight, it's always going to be nice to get damage on a demo or a medic. Getting damage on a demo means that that demo is usually forced to back up and re-heal, and that means they're not going to be applying as much damage to your team, meaning your team is healthier to get aggressive or take strong positioning or do whatever it is you'd like to do. And getting damage on a medic is very straightforwardly nice because, A, you could just be forcing them to reposition or back up rather and get a pack or something like that, meaning the players actually fighting the mid-fight on the front lines are not getting directly healed. Or, in a very direct sense, getting damage on the med makes it much easier to kill that medic with bombs, right? And much easier for your soldiers to follow up on that damage, get that kill, and killing a medic on mid is a very nice thing to happen because that you can snowball that into just a round win off of the mid fight alone. So high priority targets like that can be quite nice, but also contextually, some of the, classes that tend to be considered lower value, such as a soldier or a scout, classes that you have multiple of, classes that you are okay sacking more often, they can still be very high priority targets. For example, if you are trying to pressure for a sack, again, this stalemate situation, except you are the team in the driver's seat this time, you're trying to create opportunities for your soldier's bomb to get a force and the other Uber to get used, and thus create an advantage for yourself in the form of Uber advantage. And there's multiple ways to do that. There's multiple things you could be looking for in this pressure, all, again, target selection. We've already talked about damage on the med being quite important for a soldier bomb, being able to kill them more easily. And in the case of an even Uber's pressure, it's going to be easier to get the force on them rather than just the kill, because they won't have an Uber on mid, whatever. Point being, in a context like that, a class that might be more valuable than would otherwise be as a potential target is like a scout sitting on high ground. The reason being, scouts are the classes that deny soldier bombs. Specifically, your roamer sacking in trying to force the other team's medic in this stalemate. So if you can deny that scout high ground, which again, area control, but also target selection, applying damage to an important target in this context, then you're making your sack that much more likely. So in different contexts, different targets are going to be more or less valuable. Let's provide another example. Demos are always a valuable pick because a demo, if you can think of the different classes as like chess pieces, and the medic is the queen, and let's say your scouts and your soldiers are like knights and bishops, the demo is like a rook, right? Just more valuable than a scout or a soldier. Not necessarily as valuable as both, but still. Nonetheless, demo is inherently a valuable class, but for something like a last hold, when you're pushing into the other team's last with Uber advantage, a demo kill is even more important because their stickies on point are going to be that first line of defense the other team has. And if there aren't traps on point, then you can basically just have a scout cap the point while your Uber is still running, which is not something you can do otherwise, and it becomes so much harder to hold last. So in that context, a demo kill is even more important. So all that was to say that the value of the target and the value of the class being shot at is a important consideration, of course, and also something that might be variable depending on the game state. things like medics are always gonna be kind of important, but shooting a medic after he just used his Uber, definitely gonna be less important, relatively speaking. And likewise, shooting a scout on just any old mid fight is fine, but not going to be as useful as shooting that same scout who's in a perfect position to deny your roamer who wants to bomb in, for example. So yes, we have the actual value of the class, and we had, what was the other tenant? I already forget by now, but yeah. Okay, what next? What is next? Oh, right, threat level was the other one. So what's next, we will say the actual ease of hitting someone. And this is actually pretty important and factors in a lot because damage is damage. And in the same way that forcing... How would I phrase this? In the same way that, as I mentioned earlier, focusing on the other team pressuring still helps to isolate their soldier bomb, because you're forcing part of the team to back up while the other's getting aggressive. Likewise, really any damage you apply is gonna be useful in some fashion, for the most part. In like a, let's say just a team fight kind of situation, right? Because in stalemates, there's definitely kind of useless damage, and some people get really, really hungry for that damage that instantly gets healed off. But on a mid-fight, damage is really valuable on really anyone, and being able to apply damage to basically anyone is forcing that player to play more passively because they are weaker and at more risk. So if you can do that, then the rest of the players either can't get as aggressive as comfortably because they don't have the same team support, or they are going to get aggressive nonetheless and get punished for it, right? So being able to hit someone is important, and not everyone is going to be as easy to hit as anyone else. Players who are on high ground, for example, high ground tends to be more... there's less room to work with, right? So if you... because you could see actually on that mid fight, for example, I think I ended up missing the sticky, but the high ground in front of the tower, right in front of me, right? There was a scout there. Valuable target to hit, scout on high ground on a mid fight. Definitely worth hitting with a sticky if you can. But the point being, that is high ground I can just shoot at. Now again, I think I missed, so maybe not making my point stand out as well. But in theory, if someone's up there, you just shoot the position and you hit them, right? You don't need to really think about your aim so much as just placing a sticky in that position. And yeah, Demo is really good at shooting places rather than people a lot of the time, especially when it comes to high ground. And so yeah, players like that are going to be relatively easy to hit. On the flip side, though, on a mid-fight again, I mean, a mid-fight is going to be a very classic example here because that is one of the most common game states in which a demo is going to sort of just be looking for damage in a very general sense, in a very freestyle situation, right? Because other positions, such as a dry push with Uber advantage, or let's say an even Uber stalemate on last, there's going to be much more clear-cut sort of rules of engagement or how things are going to play out versus a mid-fight. They all look different, right? And there's going to be different people in different positions doing different things. So you have to approach it in a more freestyle kind of way. Right, what was the point I was making before I went on that pointless tangent? Right, so on that mid-fight, players are going to be trying to spam the other team, but also dodging spam themselves. Every single mid-fight I play, I'm paying attention to where the other demo is shooting their stickies because I don't want to get hit by them. Because I know that I'm a valuable target as a demo. I know that if the other team shoots me with... if I get hit with one or two stickies and I have to play really passively, that's bad for my team, not just me. So, yeah, I'm paying attention to something like that. I am harder to hit on a mid-fight than maybe some of my teammates are. And as a result, an enemy demo might be prioritizing my teammates more just because that's where the damage can actually connect, right? So, of course, the actual value, the threat, all these things of the target are going to be important factors, but another important factor is, can you actually hit them? Because some players are just in easier to hit positions. It tends to be players who are further forward, which is actually quite nice as well, because that tends to mean they're easier for your teammates to hit as well, and they tend to be more isolated. So yeah. And we may as well throw that in as another consideration, is isolated players are really, really nice to shoot at for a couple of reasons. So for starters, it kind of goes hand in hand with someone being easy to shoot at. Usually when players are isolated, they tend to be easier to get damage on. But likewise, likewise, you as a demo are an important class for making damage calls and for sort of leading who your team should be shooting at. Because again, you're a big damage dealer, so if you're calling not just who you're hitting, but who you're going to shoot at as you're going to shoot at them, then your teammates know to shoot at those players as well, or know that they can play in such a way that that player is going to be hurt. So if I am a soldier on mid, for example, and my demo is calling that he's shooting a scout on high ground, or let's give a very specific example. Snakewater mid. I, as the demo, when I play Snakewater mid, I love to throw a blind sticky top right that I just air det on the corner top right, because the flank tends to like to play on that corner. And I don't know if they're playing that corner close or not, but I'll throw a sticky up there, because if it hits, then that's good damage chunking their flank. And a lot of the time, their roamer isn't going to be buffed, and the flank scout probably doesn't have a buff either. So at the very least, I'm like ruining their crit heals, but I'm usually chunking into their health pool as well. So if I'm calling on a mid that I'm about to shoot top right, then as a soldier on that same mid playing the right side, or a flank scout, for example, I might shove top right at that same time. This isn't like some crazy strategy or plan we have to talk about in advance. It's just kind of spur of the moment. Oh, I know my guy's going to be shooting here. Then there's an opportunity to like peek that really quickly. So when it comes to shooting isolated players, you as the demo are really good at securing those kills, not necessarily by landing the killing blow, which is not something demo is particularly strong at, but by opening up the opportunity, but more specifically taking the initiative and sort of making the pieces fall into place to secure that isolated kill, right? Because getting isolated kills in team fights is a really, really straightforward way to get your team an advantage and make it more likely that you're going to win. So yeah, what else? There was another facet here, and quite an important one, which is kind of just your role. It's what we talked about at the very beginning, but it is something that's very important to consider. Actually, I think this demo is gonna end soon here. I learned that teams have their demo hold shutter, actually, when pushing out of last, which I didn't know, and I should have been doing here, and that's why we get back captain lose. Instead of finding another demo and run the risk of it not being a Demoman demo, I am just going to, let's see, that is, let's go to take 20,000. And we might get a little demo review-y here, just look at a couple concrete examples of what's happening on the screen, just to sort of highlight the these examples I've been talking about and considerations. Right, so your role. It is important to remember your role. It is important to remember that as a demo, you really like to deny the other team from just walking at your team. This is something that happens pretty often. On mid fights, you're very often trying to shoot at the other team's combo when they walk forward with their bombs. And on those sack attempts from the other team, you're very often ignoring the sacker and just focusing on the choke point that the other team is trying to pressure. This is a very classic example. You will see invite players, a soldier will whiz by their head and they won't even flinch, because they know that their real priority is the players behind that bomb that are trying to capitalize off of it or pressure with it. And you're trying to make that pressure less effective, because a sack without pressure should easily be dealt with by your team. So a lot of the time you're going to be ignoring sometimes really big threats. So we talked about how, the threat level is an important consideration. There are going to be times where on a mid, I will be getting bombed. I know I'm getting bombed. I'm getting landed on. And I'm thinking, I just need to trust my team to kill this soldier or kill these 2 soldiers. Because if I can stop the other team from walking forward and doing anything with their bomb, then it's fine. Because if I die for 2 soldier kills, that's honestly a net positive for my team, actually. So that's totally okay. And on the flip side, if the other team tries to get too aggressive and I end up getting a kill, in fact, while trying to stave off that walk forward from them, then that's even better, right? Because I'm actually like trading out with someone. Well, you're already trading out with the soldiers, but still. So there are going to be plenty of times. And scouts as well. As scouts on me, I need to shoot at someone else because they are threatening to just walk at the team and kill all of us. It's usually like a demo or a combo or just things in general. Then yeah, I will just ignore that player and try to move around as best as I can to dodge their shots and whatnot, stay alive. But sometimes you just don't have the luxury to look at them. So actually being able to have tunnel vision, ironically enough, is kind of important as a demo and can be nice. So we are looking at a mid here, and I actually don't apply a ton of damage, but you can see the thought process, right? I try to shoot at the combo. I see a soldier on height who's also probably the most forward on the team, so definitely throw a sticky at that guy. And my team is taking a lot of space, so I start crossing. Suddenly a couple players are running at me, so I turn to shoot at them because they're important threats. I could still keep shooting. Well, when I say I could, I don't mean it's a viable option, but I mean I am literally capable of still shooting at the players and choke. But no, suddenly there's an important threat, or 2 important threats running at me trying to kill me, so I'm going to shoot at them instead. So just highlighting examples there of each of those stickies, there was a consideration of kind of some of those factors going into where I want to shoot it, right? And you can play different mids differently, or play different team fights differently. I will mention one game state that might not come up here, which is dry pushing. And it's almost a factor in and of itself, and that is positioning. Because I guess I did already mention high ground, but shooting players out of good positioning is quite important. Shooting players off of high ground is nice, but especially in those uber ad pushes in which you're trying to dry push, which means pushing without using your uber. In those cases, the other team is usually going to be positioned somewhere to get good spam and want to be in like a strong defensive position. And you are uniquely equipped to shoot at that position. Remember, again, you don't even have to be shooting at players. You can just shoot at the position a lot of the time. And this is something that I'll run into actually as a demo. I'll have like really nice traps up, usually like pretty deep traps. Unfortunately, you want to trap the doorway that they're walking through and just dead instantly, but you can't all the time. So sometimes you have to trap something a little more passively, a little deeper into the point, but it's going to be pretty tricky. And an advantage of a trap like that is that the other team is not going to, once they've gotten through the door and once, they've taken that positioning, they usually let their guard down to things like sticky traps. But the big trouble is you can't really watch them past a certain point because the other demo, is going to spam you out of that position to be able to watch it. So even shooting the other combo, 1, 2 stickies, suddenly they have to back up and you're immediately much safer. You don't have to deal with spam. And yeah, things are going to be much nicer. This is looking like kind of a disad situation. I am trying to shoot at the scout there. Seems like, again, just furthest player forward and really the only one that I can reasonably get damage on. So pretty easy decision there. Kind of gets made for me. This is looking like a disad sort of scenario, so the target selection is going to be, well, you're looking to like set up traps more rather than actually spam, even though I did get some spam, but nonetheless, let's see one more situation here, kind of team fight. This is going to look like a pretty straightforward dry push, though. We have a lot of kills. I don't know if I'll even be fighting anyone, but once we get past one more fight, where there's some actual action, then we'll probably call it there. So, let's see, we're capping. We actually deny 3, I think, so it should be a free second point as well. Oh, I remember this. This is horrible. Yeah, my combo just kind of leaves me, so I die to a scout who runs right past the Uber. We win anyway, so whatever. Oh, we get a mid-fight. This is lovely. So first sticky, and on mid-fights, those first stickies can usually be pretty automatic. You can see, you just catch the right timing, hit 3 players, lovely. Shooting at the demo there. I see that scout behind on high ground, now I see him walk up. And at this point I notice, oh shoot, the combo's walking left. In my brain, alarm bells are going off because I know when another team walks left into that low ground position on a mid, like sultry mid that we're playing, it means they want to walk up at me right now. So immediately, that scout on height is no longer that big of a priority to me because the other team's combo is going to immediately want to walk up at me. So I drop to the floor, which I'd like to be with my combo, ideally here. I'm separated from heals, but nonetheless, I'm just shooting at players trying to walk up because my main job is to deny players from walking up. I hit a lucky pipe over the point to get a kill, but then just spamming not the player, but the position gets the demo pick as well, and I end up cleaning up another kill as well. That was actually one of the better mids I played this pug, so it works out as the final example, but you can see some of the thought process going into target selection there. It requires a bit of experience understanding what the other team is trying to do, and what is or isn't good for a team in different situations. But also just an understanding of your role, understanding that you need to be kind of denying the other team at large, while also in those cases where, for example, before the other team started trying to walk up, and they're just playing pretty standard positioning, it's about looking for opportunities. For example, just getting nice damage on different players as they're establishing positioning, or shooting that scout on high ground, maybe create an opportunity there. So yeah, mix of just playing your role, trying to make things happen there, while also creating opportunities for your team kind of out of nothing just by hitting some nice shots. So anyway, I am as surprised as you all are that at this point I still have things to talk about as far as my main class of demo is concerned. But target selection's a really big one. It's an important skill for demo and something to consider. So when you're looking over your own demo gameplay, definitely consider, who am I shooting? Why am I shooting at them? And is there something better that I can be shooting at? And yeah, hopefully this was entertaining. If not, hopefully you're fast asleep. Nonetheless, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.